Okay, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you for those that are on Zoom. But I'm happy that we have more people in person than on Zoom. All right, so let's give a round of applause for that. You know, it's really nice to get back into things, and I love you guys on Zoom. But you know, it's good to have people here, and God willing, this will be the beginning of many more to come. A big thank you to our sponsor. Right, is that Alan and Michael, in memory of Michael's mother, right? Right, may her memory be for a blessing. So thank you so much for sponsoring. If anybody wants to sponsor Lunch to Learn in the future, please let me know. There's always opportunities for that and for anything else. I'll always take your money, so don't worry about it. Okay, so today's Lunch to Learn, I decided to combine two different topics, right? On one hand, we have Thanksgiving next week, right? And it's not Thanksgiving like was a couple of years ago, right? But Hanukkah does start on Monday of the long weekend, right? Of Thanksgiving. Now, Thanksgiving, why am I talking about Thanksgiving? It's not a Jewish holiday, right? But the idea of being thankful, of course, is a very deep rooted in Judaism, right? And I want to show how the idea of being thankful, we could really learn a deep insight into the depth of being thankful from the holiday of Hanukkah, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, that's the topic. That's what we're going to do. How to find a deeper meaning of being grateful, being thankful, and having that gratitude, right, from the holiday of Hanukkah. So let's take it like this. There's a very famous thing that we do on Hanukkah. Anybody could guess? What do we do on Hanukkah?
Light candles.
Light candles, that's one thing. What else? Spin the dreidel, right? Eat latke. Anybody else? Donuts. Okay, we got the donuts.
Anything fried.
Anything fried, right? Presents. Okay, yeah, that's just a secular way of. You know, I was a kid. I always like presents. If you want to give me a present, no problem, right? But of course, there's always that idea of presents. But I want to talk about the dreidel, right? I want to talk about the dreidel. Right? Why do we spin the dreidel on Hanukkah? So yes, it's a fun activity, right? I sit down with my kids, right? I find pennies and we put it out and we divide it, right? And we spin the dreidel and it's fun. And at the end, we put all the money to charity. It's like, I don't know, like 50 cents by then, whatever it is, right? But why do we spin the dreidel, right? So let's just look at the first source. And I'm going to speak about it outside for a little bit. What is the idea of spinning the dreidel? So the commentaries tell us, right, it's brought down that the Hanukkah story, right, let's just give a very quick overview of the Hanukkah story for those that either need a refresher or know it, right, but it's always good just to put things in perspective. The Hanukkah story happened smack in the middle of the Second Temple era, right, give or take about 200, 250 BCE, right, before the Common Era. And the Hanukkah story happened with the Syrian Greeks coming down from Syria and attacking Israel. Actually, Israel at the time was under the Egyptian Greeks, and the Syrian Greeks took over. And the Syrian Greeks' philosophy was that they try to make every culture, right, everybody like them. Right? I guess they had a lack of self-confidence and they need everybody to be like themselves, right? Or whatever, right? But they need everybody to be like them. And what was their philosophy? Their philosophy was no spirituality, just the materialistic world, just the intellectual world, no spirituality. The difference between the Greeks and the Romans and the Persians and the Romans, they destroyed the temple, right? They destroyed it because they knew there was some spirituality, right? But they destroyed it. The Greeks said, why are we going to destroy a beautiful temple like this? And it's a beautiful structure, right? It's magnificent. So what did they do? They said, let's keep it. But we're just going to make it a secular building. We're going to make it a beautiful, design, right? They're going to put a big plaque, right? Come, let's go check it out. Another sightsee to see. And they made it secular. That was their philosophy. So what happened? Right? What by them doing that, they also had to decree that you cannot learn Torah. Right? You can't learn Torah because learning Torah is of the fundamentals of having spirituality. Right? So they decreed you can't learn Torah. So of course, the Jewish people don't take well to know. right? We are the stubborn-necked nation, right? As God called us. We don't like no. So what they do, right? They went out and hid in caves. They went and hid in caves and they learned Torah. But the Greeks knew this. So they would go out and send search parties to go and look in the different caves. So what they do, they had a system. They had someone watching. And when they saw a patrol of Greeks coming around, they would whistle, run back. I don't know what they did exactly, right? But they would hide the Torah scrolls that they were learning from, and they would bring out something like a dreidel, and they would spin and play tops, right? That's what they would play. And therefore, right, to commemorate the dedication of the Jewish people at that time, the tradition has come to play dreidel. That's sort of a background. So first of all, it's not just a kid game. As we are very well aware, anything in Judaism that we do is not just because, right? We're very aware of that, right? We eat sufganiyot, right? We have cheesecake on Purim. Right? Anything that we do, that has a reason. Even our games, right? Even spinning the dreidel, right, has a connection, a meaning behind it. But I want to take it a little deeper, right? And connecting it to our class. So what does it say on the dreidel? Anybody know what letters? And you could look. Right, it's right there. What letters are on the dreidel? Very good. Nes, Nun, Gimel, Gadol, Haya, Hey, Sham. There. Right? What is in Israel? What does it say in Israel? Right? Po. Right? So if you actually, right, besides the difference, in Israel and America, 1 day or 2 days of a holiday, right? But our dreidels are different, right? If you buy a dreidel from Israel, right, it's going to say Po. A miracle happened here. Right? If you buy a dreidel outside of Israel, it's going to say Sham, there, because the miracle didn't happen here. It happened to us, right? But it happened there. So the dreidels in Israel say Po here, and the dreidels in America and outside of Israel say Sham there. But whatever it is, either one of them, the letters say Nes Gadol Hayat Sham. There's a big miracle that happened. Let's say we're out of America, we're out of Israel, so let's just say Sham there. So we're connecting to the miracle, even when we're playing. Right? We're saying that we're connecting to this wonderful miracle, right, that happened to the Jewish people. Now, let's take a step back for a second. When you spin a dreidel, right, what happens? What happens when you spin a dreidel? Anybody?
It spins and then falls.
Okay, good. Right, but what? Excellent. Thanks.
It goes around and around.
Around. But what happens when it goes round and round?
It blurs the letters.
Very good. Right? The letters blur. Right? Letters blur. But when you spin the dreidel, you spin anything, right? The letters blur. It's going too fast. I mean, it depends how fast you do it, right? But even if it's going not too fast, the letters blur. But when it stops, the letters become clear. What's this teaching us? So we'll get back to that in 1 second. Let's take another thing. Why is it, right? Why is it that oil lights and apple juice doesn't? Last time, if you take apple juice, right? We have a lot of apple juices from the boxes, right? We have a lot of apple juices, right? Or orange juice, right? So, you know what? I'm going to save some money, right? I got a good deal, right? In Costco on apple juice or whatever. I have a whole bunch. I'm going to put the apple juice into my little glasses and I'm going to put a wick in there. I'm going to try to light it. Is it going to light? No. You look at me like I'm crazy. Of course not, right? Like, what am I even suggesting? Of course not. But if I take oil, it's a little more expensive. Right, I put it in there, and the custom is to use olive oil, right, which is even more expensive. Right, it lights. The question is, why the juice of one fruit and the juice of another fruit? What's the difference? Why does one light and one doesn't light? But we don't stop and think about it. Why? Because that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. I don't know. Oil lights, apple juice doesn't light. It's just the way it is. That's how we grew up. We don't stop to think about why one lights and why one doesn't light. That's just the way it is, right? Drop something from the sky, it falls. If you go into outer space, it doesn't. There's no gravity, right? If you take tomatoes, you make ketchup, right? You take mustard seeds, you have mustard, right? It's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Wood burns and metal doesn't, right? Can't make a fire out of metal. You can melt the metal with fire. It's just the way it is. We have to stop and start focusing on why things happen, right? And the same way we become accustomed that oil lights and apple juice does not light, we've also started to become accustomed to our daily routines and everything that happens, right? Every day we wake up in the morning, right? That's just part of nature. That's part of what happens, right? It just is. We wake up. Not everybody wakes up. Actually, my grandfather, who I never met, bless him, Mary, didn't wake up one day. The night beforehand, he was at a family simcha, right? This is way back. Right? I'm 40, so it's like almost 50 years ago, right? But he just didn't wake up. Just didn't wake up. He was fine, right? He was fine the night beforehand, having a great time. We take these things for granted. We take things for granted the same way we take for granted that oil lights. So let's go back to the dreidel, right? What are we trying to figure out by the dreidel? So when we spin the dreidel, as we said, we see a blur, right? We just see, can't make out any of the letters. But when we stop, we can make out the letters that say Nes Gadol Haya Sham. There was a big miracle that happened there. What is this telling us? That we are living our lives in a blur. We're living our lives in a blur. We're just moving and doing, and if it's watching football games, right, whatever, right, or if it's going to work, right, if it's hanging out with our kids, if you like art, whatever it is, right, we're just doing our day-to-day activities. And even when we, and I'll even throw this out, even when we do certain things, we go to, for example, my schedule, right? I'm gonna throw you my schedule, right? I wake up at 6:30 in the morning, right? I go to services at 6:45, right? I come back, right? I help with my kids for breakfast, making lunch, right? I take my boy to Daniel Adim, he's just right here. I'll just go visit him and say hello, right? And I drop him off here. I come around. Usually, I see someone. I say hi. What's going on? Maybe I pop into the federation, pop into the JCA, to the offices. I come back. Different days, chavrusas, learning partners, work on bulletin, work on different things. Right? Bring in programs, different speakers, lunch and learns. Come home. Right? Eat supper. Do homework with my kids. Go back. Services. I have a routine. Okay, it's slightly different here, slightly different here. Even the spiritual actions that we do become routine. Even the spiritual actions that we do, we have to stop and think about them. Our daily lives, we have to stop and think about it, realize, and open up our eyes and reflect, realize that everything's a miracle. What Hanukkah is supposed to teach us, one of the lessons of Hanukkah is that everything that happens to us is a miracle. What was the miracle of Hanukkah? There was two separate miracles of Hanukkah. One of the famous ones is, very good, the oil, right? That's what and we won the war. The winning the war was a tremendous miracle if you really stop and think about it. Right? It was a handful of rabbis, Kohanim, right? Okay, come on, us rabbis, we work out, we're really strong, right? Okay, not that much. My wife wishes I work out more, right? Or just work out. But right, a bunch of rabbis, Kohanim, priests, okay, maybe they were fit, maybe they weren't, who knows? But a handful of them fought the mighty Greek army with elephants and infantry and trained soldiers. And they won. It took a little while. It wasn't like Abraham threw sand and it turned into bows and arrows and the war was over one day. It took time. And as they kept on winning more, the Jewish people came behind them and their army built up a little bit. But still, it was a tremendous miracle. It was unheard of. That's one miracle. We don't do anything for that miracle. Do we have parades? Right? Do we have a remembrance for that? Yes, we're in our prayer. In the Ala Nisim prayer that we insert in the Amidah, and we insert when we do Birchat Hamazon, the after blessing, after bread, we insert in there a small little paragraph, right? Inside, of course, we talk about the oil. It says the many in the hands of the few, and then we move on to the miracle of the oil. Talk about it just a little. Why don't we talk about that a lot? The miracle of the oil. We light the candles and we celebrate around the candles and we eat all oily stuff, right? All our pimples come out, right? Okay, maybe not, right? But, because of the oil. Why don't we talk about the miracle of the war so much? The commentaries explain it's because of the same idea. Because the miracle of the war, even though if you stop to think about it, it was an open miracle. but it's something that people could start, justifying, say, well, maybe there were, guerrilla warfare, they did little tactics, right? They went here and they made a hole there and they made a hole there. And over time, they gained more momentum and they made little traps. And they were just genius generals that they were able to, change the course of the war. And you could start legitimizing over time. And of course, legend becomes whatever. And you start saying, well, it was a miracle, but it was also a lot of their hands. They were really strong. They were really smart of how they fought. They trapped in canals and in ravines, and they on top and whatever it is. I'm not a war person, right?
I just think the fact that we had wars. I mean, obviously it was just a few men who defeated the Greek army, but wars happened regularly.
That's true. That's true. But we celebrate the firm story. We won the war there also. Right, but again, we don't. But it's still a miracle, right? It's a miracle. So, right. So we're explaining the reason why we're not making a big deal out of it is because that's something that we have to stop to think and reflect to say that was a miracle also, just like the miracle of oil. The miracle of oil, there's no way of explaining. Right? There's no way of explaining it. A flask of oil that lasts for 1 day lasts for 8 days. I don't care what you try to say. Right? There is no way of explaining. Right? There's science is science, right? Something can last for only 1 day, or only can last for 1 day. Right? But it lasts for 8 days, that's an open miracle that there is no way of explaining. So what we're doing on Hanukkah is we're saying that we recognize that the open miracles is sort of the dreidel stopping. Right? Is we are able to stop it. The open miracles allows us to take a step back with the dreidel stopping, and we're able to read Nes Gadol Haya Sham. There was a big miracle that happened there. It is sort of a step back from our daily routine. Whoa! Oil lasted for 8 days? Like, oh my gosh, how could that be? An experience that I had in my lifetime, and I'm sure everybody had one of these experiences, and it's unfortunately, I was in New York City during 9/11. And I think a bunch of you know this, I've mentioned it other times. I was in New York City during 9/11. I was studying in yeshiva there. I was in Brooklyn, right? And it was just a moment in my life that's made me stop. Stop. What is going on here? How could this happen? Right? I saw the towers collapsing. I had memos from the 100-something floor fly all the way to Brooklyn on our steps of my yeshiva, my school. Right? The city of New York stopped. It was quiet. Right? You could hear a pin drop that night. It was just a moment in my life where life stops. Our routine, our themes, our this, or that. No one was going to karate, and no one was going to play their little leagues, and no one was going to their concerts, and no one was having their little parties or whatever it is. Everybody was stopped. And that's what the miracle of Hanukkah is supposed to be. We celebrate the miracle of Hanukkah, of the oil, to remind us that we have to stop in our lives and recognize that the miracle of the war was a miracle. That's easier than other things in our lives. We just stop to think about it. But that's up to us. The rabbis can make us say that's a miracle. The oil, yes. But they say you have to figure out. You have to stop and reflect. We're giving you the miracle of the oil. And on a deeper level, the commentaries say that's why God made the miracle of the oil. And it's not on the source sheets, but it's a question that we've asked in the past. Why did God allow them to find the flask of oil? Or why did he allow the oil to last for 8 days? There was no need for it. And if you don't have oil, you're not obligated in the midst of lighting a candle. If God forbid someone doesn't have an arm, he's not obligated in the midst of tefillin. Right? If someone can't drink, my brother-in-law is allergic to wine, he can't have wine on the Pesach. He has grape juice, even though it's better to use wine. Right? He can use wine. Right? If God made you in a certain, or it's lack of, you're not. In the days in Europe, unfortunately, there's many cities that we're not able to get the 4 species, right? For Sukkot, the Arba Minim, the Lulav, the Esrog. God did not hold it against them. They tried their hardest, but they couldn't do it. So why did God make the miracle of the oil? Right? Why did he create this miracle if it was really unnecessary? So they didn't have, say they lived for 1 day and waited till they were able to press new oil, and then they'll light the menorah in the temple. And the commentaries tell us because that's the miracle of Hanukkah. That's what Hanukkah represents. Hanukkah represents that God is telling us, I'm giving you an opportunity to stop in your tracks. Because something like this, oil lasting for 8 days, should stop you in the tracks, to stop you in your busy life. It's like the Dreidel stopping, and you're able to read the words. And that's going to allow you to reflect that the war was also a miracle. And then our daily lives, we have constant miracles. So Hanukkah, if you really stop to think about it, Hanukkah is a time that gives us the opportunity to reflect, gives us the opportunity to stop and say, whoa, thank you, God. And that really takes us to the next step, bottom source. The Talmud tells us that the Hanukkah is established entirely for the sake of gratitude. Right? This is not because it's next to each other or Thanksgiving or anything like that. It's the Talmud, 1,500 years ago, right? Before the pilgrims ever came to America. Right? Right? The Talmud tells us that Hanukkah was established entirely for the sake of gratitude. What does that mean? Hanukkah was established because oil lasted for 8 days. Hanukkah was established because the Jewish people got rid of the yoke of the Syrians off them. Right? Chanukah was established because they were able to win the war. What does it mean that it was established for gratitude? So based off what we're saying, we're able to understand. And I want to bring it out, right, with a fascinating explanation from last week's Torah portion, 2 weeks ago Torah portion. 2 weeks ago Torah portion, if you turn the page, right, there's a very famous line, right? And Leah had her fourth son, Vatar od vateled ben, and Leah, right, Yaakov's wife, had another child and she gave birth. And what did she call them? It said, Apam odes Hashem. Apam, and this time I will thank God. But Yikra Shema Yehuda, and she called him Yehuda, Judah. And we're called Yehudim, Jews, comes from that name. Even though you might not be from the tribe of Judah, we are all called Yehudim, Jews, from that name. Apam odes Hashem, this time I'll thank God. The Talmud tells us, Leah is the first one to thank God, to show gratitude to God. Come to us, what the heck? Abraham didn't thank God? Come on, Abraham recognized God. Isaac didn't name, Jacob didn't, Noah, same thing for the flood. Like, Leah was the first one to thank God? What does that mean? I saw this unbelievable explanation, I think where Moshe Feinstein says this, right? And others talk about this idea. That Leah was the first one to thank God for something that seemed to be natural. This was her fourth child. So she was fertile, right? She was able to have children, thank God. And she was able to have children. It was something that was natural for her. She was the first one to thank God for the given. For Hapam also, not this time as they translated, but really Hapam also, and also this time. Hapam, also this time I'll thank God, not just the first child that, oh, thank you, God, had a child, right? Or someone didn't have a child for 15 years or 10 years or whatever it is, or other things that people, something. Hapam, my fourth child, thank God I'm able to have children, but I'm going to recognize I also have to thank God for this child, just like I thank God for the first child that I had. She was the first one to do that. That goes to Leah. So what do we see? That the true level of gratitude, as we see from Leah, the depth of gratitude is to recognize, right, that our daily activities, what we have on a daily basis, and the things that we might not think is something unique. We didn't win the lottery, right? We didn't whatever, something didn't, but our regular day-to-day activities, recognize we need God for that. Recognize that it's a gift from God. We have to do our effort, we have to do our istadlut, our due diligence, but recognize that that's from God. And that, as we explained, is what Hanukkah is supposed to bring to us. God made the miracle of the oil to make us stop, right? To make us reflect that the miracle of the war was a miracle. And when we spin the dreidel, it's constantly moving and we're just busy in our lives, but when it stops, it makes us reflect back that everything in our lives really is a miracle. I just want to talk a couple of minutes on gratitude, but before we do that, any questions on anything we said so far? Comments? Okay. So let's just talk about gratitude, just expand on this idea of what gratitude really is. right? I found this on h.com, but this idea is very famous. I just quoted it. Kavod, the word kavod, right? So the word kavod means honor. That's honor, kavod. You want to give someone kavod. But the word kavod also means heavy. A davar kaved, right? The object is heavy. So kavod means honor, but heavy. Why? As I spoke to Alex this morning, right? Every word is the reason why the words mean the same, right? Right? We've talked about this before, right? The words, right? It's not just because they mean the same thing. In Judaism, there's a rhyme and a reason. It's God's language. So why is it that kavod, honor, respect, is also heavy? So the idea is brought down. A heavy object is something that I have got to deal with. If it's light, I just kick it out of the way. Right? Respecting others means that I view him or her as being substantial. Their opinion is something I must grapple with. I cannot simply dismiss them with a wave of the hand. The idea of respect, and I'm not saying you guys, maybe me or others, right? But a lot of times when we think of respect, is someone sitting on the dais, right? Giving them a plaque, right? Writing them a nice letter, right? But really showing someone respect, kavod, is on a daily basis. Meaning to say, what it really means is thinking that the other person is a substantial person, recognizing that the other person is a person. Not that someone that could just kicked on the side. Their opinion matters, their feelings matters, and their thoughts matter, their actions matter. That's real respect. Yes, there's a higher level of respect. Them on the dais, or if you do this or you do that. But real respect, the bottom level of respect, which is the crucial day-to-day activity respect, is showing that every person matters. Like something that's heavy. You can't just kick it out of the way. That's the true level of respect. And that's the idea of gratitude. And as we say every morning, Modani lefanecha, right? Everybody knows Modani? I'm not going to sing it to you because I want you guys to stay in the room, right? Right? But Modani lefanecha, I'm grateful to you. Right? I give thanks to you, Melachad Kayam, the King that lives forever. That you return my soul to me, the abundance of belief. We say this every morning. How many times? And I'm talking to myself. When I say it in the morning, I'm rushing in, right? Okay, I wake up at 6:30, right? I try to get to show by 6:45. Don't ask me how. I only live a couple minutes away, right? I get dressed very quickly, right? But right, I run in. I'm half asleep. My coffee, thank God, is in my mouth, not on my shirt, right? And I pull my tefillin, I put on my top, put on my tefillin, and I go. I continue with that. Do we really think about Modani? What is Modani? Right? What is Modani? Right? What is Modani? We say Modani. What is Modani? Right? Modeh, I'm thankful. But what does the word Modeh also mean? And Alex, feel free to say if you remember, not to put you on the spot. Right? That's what happens when you learn with me in the morning of lunch and learn. To admit, right? Right? To admit. Modeh, I admit. Right? Ani modia lecha. I admit to you, right? Or I'm grateful to you. Why does the word modeh mean I admit? And why does the word modeh mean I'm grateful? Because the highest level of gratitude is admitting that I need that person. The highest level of to really truly reach gratitude is you could give the person a basket, and you could write them a nice letter, and you could write them, whatever it is, and you could, write a nice post on Facebook or whatever it is. And those things are important. But if you're just doing that just to, appease the other person or to make the other person be, that they did something for you, that's a level of gratitude. But the true gratitude is for you. Gratitude is for the individual. Gratitude is not for the other person. Gratitude is for me. Not to get too off track. Oh, we have time, right? The commentaries say that Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Moshe, right? By the 10 plagues, what were the first and second and the third plagues? Moshe Rabbeinu didn't do those plagues. Why not? There were the blood, turning the water into blood, bringing frogs out of the Nile, and then the third one was turning the sand into lice, right? Kenan to lice. Moshe did not do those plagues. Aaron, his brother, did. Why? So the Talmud tells us, go ahead, Bonnie. Because he was saved by them. The water saved him when his parents put him in a basket and the water saved him, and the earth saved him when he buried the Egyptian that he killed that was about to kill a Jew, self-defense, protecting his fellow Jew. So out of gratitude to the water and to the sand, Moshe did not strike the sand and the water. I remember the first time hearing this, I'm like, okay, really? Like what, the water and the sand are like gonna be upset that Moshe said it's gonna hit them, right? Like what, they're gonna write a letter in the paper, Moshe's a terrible person that they didn't, like, no, because gratitude is not for the other person. Of course, it's important to show the other person they did something for you, but gratitude is for me to realize that I needed that person. I need to be, Moshe had to be grateful because he gained something out of the water and the earth. So he for himself needs to be grateful. Of course, it's important to show the other person, and that's all part of it. But gratitude is for me. I have to recognize that I needed X, Y, and Z. I needed that person. And that's when we start off our morning. What do we say? You return my soul to me. If God does not return my soul to me, what happens? We started off with my grandfather. Doesn't wake up that morning. So our whole day that we're standing right here, that we're able to have delicious fish and tuna, whatever it is you ate, right? Is because God returned my soul to me. So we need God. We need God. So we start off our day, Modeh, I admit, and by admitting, I'm grateful that you are the one that returned my soul to me. It's not just science and occurrences. God made it as science. But it's not just, yeah, of course one wakes up. Yeah, fluke, someone doesn't wake up. Yeah, of course. No. It is a miracle every morning someone wakes up. But truly being grateful, you recognize who you need. And if you recognize that you need God, and God is the one that returns the soul off, my whole day is different. Right? My whole day is different. I need God. I want to be in God's good grace. Right? That is the depth of what it means, right, to be grateful. And that's why, and I'm not going to go through the next, this you can read it yourself, the Talmud says, right? That's the idea of making a blessing on our foods, right? Before we eat something, right? Is realizing that the food that we eat is a gift from God, right? Before we eat something, if it's water, even if it's water, it's something natural. It's water. If it's food that was made, we show gratitude to God, right, that we eat it. So now let's tie this all back into Hanukkah, right? And then if anybody has questions or comments, I'll be happy to take them. So we talked about two different ideas, which are interconnected. First, we start off the idea with Hanukkah, right? The miracle of the oil, right? The concept of the Dreidel that makes us realize that in our busy lives and what's going on in our daily lives, we lose focus. Right, and we just become more gal, as the Hebrew word is. We just become accustomed. We walk in rote, right? And just our daily lives and our daily things. Right? Hanukkah, when the dreidel stops, we are able to see the words Nes Gadol Haya or Sham. There was a miracle that happened there or here. It allows us to reflect, and that's why we celebrate the miracle of the oil. Right? Because the miracle of oil is something that has to make us stop and say, "What's going on?" It makes us reflect into our daily lives and the things that seemingly not necessarily things that we'd be able to maybe say it's science, it's this, it's a general, they're just tremendous tactics or whatever it is. No, the war was also a miracle. But we need the oil to make us realize that. And now what we spoke about is how we're supposed to look at our daily lives, realizing that God is the one that really helps us out in everything that happens. We tied that into being grateful. Right? That's really the depth of being grateful. Leah is the first one to start the concept of being grateful for the things that we are used to, which seems normal. That's Modeh Ani. Let's look at the last thing. Thinking back, every other time we light candles. Think about it for a second. Well, every time we light candles, what do? Shabbos candles. How do we light Shabbos candles? 2. Havdalah, it's 1, but we take 2 wicks together. Right? When we have a mitzvah of lighting candles, it's always in a pair of 2. Chanukah, you start with 1. Then we add another one, and another one, and another one. And every night we add 1. Why? Why is that? So the Talmud tells us different reasons. But I saw this beautiful concept. It teaches like this. That the explanation like this on Hanukkah, what we're trying to teach us is how to move forward in the darkness, right? I spoke about this, and I'm probably going to speak about this on Shabbos afternoon. If Fish is out of town, I'll be giving the sermon this Shabbos. So please join me. And I'll be giving the class at 4:30 in the afternoon before Mincha. I'm going to talk about this idea a little bit, but I just want to talk about it a little bit now. Hanukkah, right, is smack in the middle of the winter. Right? It's like the darkest time. If you really look at it, it depends on the year, but it's right around the shortest days of the year. Hanukkah represents the power of getting out of the darkness and the metaphor of our spiritual darkness too. How do we do that? Right? We do that by realizing that all it takes is one light. All it takes is one light, one small good deed, one hello to your neighbor, right? One smile at a coworker. One small action, one small light that leads to another. And slowly every day, these actions add up, filling the world with light. But to start, rather than depressing the whole world to full of darkness, you have to start this with one candle. So it's a metaphor. We start with one candle, and we add on, and we add on. Because when we are able to truly be grateful, and when we are truly able to realize that everything that we do, of course, we have free will to choose how to do things. But at the end of the day, what happens in the materialistic world is just a shell for a spiritual reality. That God is the one that is allowing us to be in here. God is the one that allows us to breathe. Right? God is the one that allows us to grow and have the free will to choose how to react to things or what to do next. Then our whole attitude changes. Of course, I'm going to smile at something. I'm not better than anybody else. God gave us different challenges, different things. God placed us in different places in life, and we all have to just grow in our challenge to get closer to God. Ezu Ashir, who's a rich person? Ethics of our Father says, Hashameach bechalka, one who's happy with his lot. Because when you realize that everything that you have is all that you need to get closer to God, you're not going to be jealous of someone else, right? You'll be able to say hello to someone else without having any problems. And you're grateful for God for everything that happens. And your whole attitude, your whole eyeglasses, you put on a whole new pair of glasses to realize that it's all an opportunity of growth. And it's all thanks to our Father in heaven. We have our choices to make. This doesn't take away from free will, but it's all with gratitude to our Father in heaven. And that, my friends, is what Hanukkah is. And that is how we get out of the struggles. Right? That's how we get out of the struggles of our lives, the hardships of our lives, the darkness that is going around us in the materialistic world and in our own spiritual life. We all have room to grow. It's just one candle at a time, one step at a time. I just want to share one story, and we'll conclude with this story of how one person changed a whole group of people. Unbelievable. So I read the story, right? And I forgot the names. It's been a little while, right? But I didn't have a chance to look it up, so I'm just going to make up the names. It's just fine anyways, right? If that's all I'm making up in the story, that's great, right? So let's just call the person Chaim, right? Chaim, good Jewish name, right? Chaim was a regular business person, great person, nice person. He went to synagogue, right? He prayed. He did his daily learning every day, right? He wasn't a rabbi. He was a good, dedicated, right, person trying to do what he can every day, right? When he retired, he got to his retirement age. Maybe he took it a little early, took it at the same time. I don't remember the exact details, but he was still active and he was still, very vibrant in his life. And him and his wife moved to a more of a retirement community here in Florida. We're very well aware of all those retirement communities, right? And him and his wife moved to a retirement community, and they went around, whatever. They made some friends, and he realized that there's a large Jewish group in this retirement community, right? Some religious, some not religious, very large Jewish group. So him and his wife slowly but surely just made like a Friday night dinner, right? And they just put up signs. They invited for COVID, right? And they invited people, right? And slowly but surely it grew, right? And it grew so much that they moved the dinner to the community, like these communities have like a rec center or like a dining room, whatever, and they had it reserved every Friday night. And he was one of the most learned people, even though he wasn't a learned person, right? And so he went out of his comfort zone and he started making the Kiddush every Friday night. And then people said, "Oh, you make Kiddush so nicely. How about the Dvar Torah?" Right? They said, like, "Man, I don't know. I was never the one giving the Dvar Torah, right? I was always the one like sitting in the back and listening to the Dvar Torah, right? I wasn't the one, right?" So the next week he studied. He was retired. He had time, right? He studied the weekly Torah portion. He came out with a nice thought. He gave it Dvar Torah, right? And this went on, and then they asked him to give a little class. Before you know it, a couple years later, he was giving a weekly class. He was doing Dvar Torah. He was doing the Friday night. He was doing the Kiddush Friday night and Shabbat lunch. And they had this whole nice big group, I don't know, 50, 60 people, right? That were coming together and giving them all, and they all had this new, vigor for their Judaism and just for life because they had this whole group together. So this person, right, that was writing the story, said he bumped into this guy, right? He was a person from his community. This person came back to his, whatever, they were visiting, kids there, I don't remember. And somehow they were talking. And this whole thing came up, like what happened? And the person said, he told me, said, "I never thought that just, inviting one or two people, right, for a Friday night dinner, right, we didn't want to be lonely, right? We wanted to have other people. Would turn into something so beautiful and so great to give all these people opportunity, right? And not only that, I have grown more in the last, year or two than I've grown in the last 60 years of my life because I put myself out there, right? I took initiative to help other people, right? To tap into something that I might not have thought that I had. And I'm not a rabbi, that's not what I'm trying to say, but I was able to tap into something and to give forth to other people at the same time we grow myself. And that, my friends, is something that we all have. Why wait till we retire? I mean, except for you, Jim, right? And Jimmy, right? But why? Oh, okay, also there, right? But why wait, right? You're all my friends, I love you guys, right? But why wait till for whatever, right? Let's all just light that one candle, right? Let's connect and stop and reflect on our busy lives. What better time to do it than when we are busy? That's what Shabbos is all about, right? That's when we have holidays, right? I know, okay, we have a couple more minutes, right? This made me think of an unbelievable story, right? It happened with my father, right? My father, many years ago, about 30 years ago, right? Went to Dallas, Texas, right? There was my father was working with Jews for Judaism, right? And there was a Jews for Jesus convention there. And the Jews for Judaism would go and, no, my father wasn't going for Jews for Judaism. My father was going with Jews for Judaism. Jews for Judaism would rent rooms in the hotel, right? And hang out in the lobby, right? To if anybody wanted to speak to them, right? So there's a lot of people there that were Jewish, right? Jews for Jesus. A lot of them were Jews, and they would just hang out in the lobby and talk to people if they wanted. And they actually got a lot of people to come and talk to them. Right? Just FYI, right? The convention knew about this. They always find out with the hotel. They would try to rent out the whole hotel, but they were always able to get rooms in the hotel, right? And my father and the group heard. My father did this one year, but they would do it many years. They heard that every convention they would say, "Don't forget, stay away from the Satan in the lobby." They would call this group the Satan. Stay away from them. But the point I'm trying to bring out is that in Dallas, Texas, there's a community called the Noahides. The Noahides, right? The Noahides are non-Jews, right? That believe in God, believe in the Torah, right? And they say, "Hey, God didn't make us Jewish, but we're going to keep the 7 Noah laws." And it's a growing community. There's many different places in Noahide Jews. But this is going back 30 years ago. It's a group there. So they heard that there's a whole bunch of rabbis in town, right? Because for this convention. So they contacted them and said, "Hey, could you come and give us chizuk, give us encouragement and talk to us," right? So my father went with one other rabbi, right, to go, and they talked to them and whatever. And they said, like, "What's one of your biggest concerns?" They said, "One of our biggest concerns is that we don't have any holiday. We don't have Shabbos. We're not allowed to keep Shabbos. And non-Jews not allowed to keep Shabbos. right? We don't have any holidays. We didn't go out of Egypt, right? We didn't do any of those, right? And we're not keeping any of the non-Jewish holidays, right? Because we don't believe in that. And so we have no holidays. It's very hard, right? And they said, more than just very hard, we don't have any time to just stop and reflect. That's what I'm trying to bring out. Shabbos, holidays, Yom Tovim, Hanukkah. It's a time to stop. So my father and the other rabbi gave me different advice. Based on the Talmud, we know when Noah came out of the ark. Right? So he said, make that a holiday. Right? You can make your own holiday. It's not like they're taking out Sefer Torah, things like that. Make that a holiday. You could keep Rosh Hashanah as a holiday because everybody gets judged on Rosh Hashanah. Right? And they gave him Tu B'Shvat and celebrating the trees coming out. So you can do something. They gave him different ideas, right? To sort of make their own kind of holidays, right? That is not in conflict with the Torah, but allows them to have that. They gave them different ideas, right? But the point I'm trying to bring out is that they recognize the lack of having holidays, the lack of having Shabbat. They realized that they were just going and going and going, and they didn't have any stop, right? We need that God orchestrated for us to have a Shabbat, a gift. Shabbat is a gift to allow us to reflect and stop saying, hey, we need to reflect. We need to let the dreidel stop for a second to be able to read Nesh Gadol Hayasham. Holidays makes us think on a different level what these miracles represent. Chanukah is to teach us one light turn into 8 lights, lasts forever. One action can continue. A miracle is not just the miracle of the lights, but it's also a miracle of the war. We have to reflect inside of them. When we realize that, we'll have the greatest level of gratitude because we realize that we need God. We need someone else. And that's the highest level of gratitude. Thank you all for joining us. All right, really appreciate it.